Every Sunday I'm front center, looking forward to playoffs. And I keep me a double wings, cause you know I got a habit. Yeah, they say I'm just a fan. What? Well, I say I'm a fanatic. And I fast forward commercial too. I ain't going to the bathroom. You know where I'm at, I ain't hard to find. You can catch me in the lab room.
Who else? Oh. Looks like we're going to be doing this one with a Redskins background in the background, all right? Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Thursday Night Football Overtime. Cowboys, Bears. Yikes. Man. I had an epiphany tonight about the Cowboys. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But first, I want to talk about Mitchell Trubisky. His mama named him Mitchell. I'm going to call him Mitchell. Okay? A lot of people been dumping on my man Mitchell this year. Okay? And you know how I always preach patience with these young quarterbacks. And yes, Mitchell Trubisky is a young quarterback. He's in year 3, but technically year 2 under his head coach, Matt Nagy. So for all intents and purposes, this is the year he was supposed to start taking that big leap forward. However, he's dealt with some injuries. I don't think Matt Nagy has done a good job up until recently of calling plays to take some of the pressure off of Mitchell Trubisky. 20 carries for David Montgomery, and I think there was another 3 or 4 carries in there for Tariq Cohen. So a little bit of balance there to balance out what Mitchell Trubisky is doing in the quarterback position. There were games earlier in the season where Mitchell was slinging it 40-plus times. There was no balance. We all remember the heat that head coach Matt Nagy was under in Chicago for not running the football. There was a stretch there in the middle of the season where there wasn't enough run plays being called. It was an issue. The Bears weren't scoring points. It was bad in Chicago, and this thing was starting to spiral out of control. You fast forward, and remember, I talked about this on my podcast, and I said, I didn't like how Matt Nagy was handling the adversity. Remember, he had no adversity last year. Everything was hunky-dory last season when he won 11 games, won the division, was the darling and sweetheart of Chicago. And he had all these cute little plays with these cute little names, and it was all this trickeration, and everybody was falling all over themselves, praising him on coming from Andy Reid's tree and how creative he was. And I think that shit went to his head. I talked about this on the podcast, and I said he forgot that he's got a young quarterback back there that still needs him to take care of him. All right, last year, he did a really good job of mixing things up. All that trickeration and all that cute stuff he was doing, all that stuff benefited Mitchell Trubisky. Took pressure off of him, didn't force him to have to go out and win games by himself. And I think he felt like, okay, Mitch should be ready year 2 to take on my full playbook, to digest everything. And if we don't run the football, because at times, Andy Reid doesn't run the football in Kansas City, and he can get away with it because he's got Patrick Mahomes. Well, you don't have Patrick Mahomes. So you need to make sure you take care of Mitchell Trubisky and give him a chance by calling a good game. He wasn't doing that earlier. So fast forward to where we are now, the last few weeks, I thought he's done a really good job of giving Mitchell Trubisky some good things he can handle, some nice, simple, easy passes. And then eventually, Mitchell will warm up. And then when you need him late in the game, like last week versus Detroit, he can make some of those throws in a clutch moment. But you got to get him into a rhythm and get him the confidence necessary that when it's time for him to make those plays, he can. I thought Mitchell did some really risky and dicey shit tonight, okay? There were some throws where I'm like, yo, Mitch, bruh, easy. He said, hey, don't call me Mitchell. My mom named me Mitchell. Call me Mitchell. Don't call me Mitch. My fault. Hey, Mitchell, man, that was a little dicey, brother, okay? 2 defenders there. Why are you doing that? He's like, hey, I got it, man. Did I throw it in there or did I throw it in there? I'm like, you threw it in there. I wouldn't do that if I were you, though. He threw a pick earlier in the game, and I'm like, bro, what was that? He's like, yeah, I thought I could zing it in there at the back of the end zone. Don't do that, Mitchell. So there were a couple of times he was living dangerously tonight, but when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. He was hot tonight. Mitch was hot tonight. My mom named me Mitchell. Don't call me Mitch. My bad, Mitchell. All right. He was hot tonight. And he had the wheels going. And that's another thing he hadn't been doing enough of this year. He hasn't been using his legs. I think Aikman alluded to that this season, that he didn't even have 100 yards rushing coming into this game. Last year, he had over 400. That's a part of his game. And I used to talk about that all last year, how this Bears offense is a lot harder to stop. And that's no secret. When you've got a mobile quarterback, look at Lamar Jackson. And I hate to bring him up and put him in the same sentence as a Mitchell Trubisky, but you see how hard their offense is to stop? You see how hard it is to stop the Seahawks offense with Russell Wilson? You see how hard it is to stop some of these teams around the league that have mobile quarterbacks, because when your quarterback is willing to use his legs to extend plays and run, it just makes it that much harder for the defense to get stops on third downs, to stay out of third and manageables, to put them in a position where they've got to also account for the quarterback using his legs. And now that kind of throws a monkey wrench in everything that they want to do schematically. You come after a quarterback that isn't afraid to use his legs, and you give him a little seam in the A-gap, and you're coming with pressure on the outside, and he takes off. All of a sudden now there's a lot of green grass and opportunity in front of him. And we saw that with Mitchell tonight on a read option where he pulled it. Next thing you know, Mitch is taking off, and it's a 23-yard touchdown run or whatever it was. When he's using his legs, he's that much more hard to game plan for, and he's much more difficult to stop and contain. And so I really like what Matt Nagy has done in terms of his play calling, and I like the fact that they're running it more. There's a little bit more balance to this offense, and more importantly, I like the way that he has responded to this adversity, because initially I wasn't a fan of how Matt Nagy was handling the adversity that was coming his way. He didn't like being questioned. He was getting chesty with the media in Chicago. And you could tell that he wasn't used to being questioned because everything went so well in year one. And I wanted to see how he was going to manage his way through this adversity. They've had injuries. They haven't had the best play at the quarterback position. He hasn't done a good job of calling plays. They've had some miscues on special teams with some missed kicks. All of those things have affected their season to the point now that they're 7-6. They're still in the hunt, but they could be 8-5 or even 9-4 right now if things had gone a little bit better throughout the course of the season. But that's what adversity does. It changes the course of your season, and it's your job as a head coach to stop that downhill avalanche and find a way to get your team back on track. And for Matt Nagy this season, I think he's done a hell of a job of kind of steering this ship back on course, because this could have. I got a friend that's a Raiders fan, okay, and he was goddamn Birdman hand rubbing at the prospects of getting a top 10 pick about a month ago. He was staring at the Bears squarely in the eyes and saying, "I love it. Keep it coming, baby. I smell a top 10 pick. I'm staring at the 7th pick in the draft right now." And he had the Birdman hand rub going. And now he's looking up. And I remember talking to him yesterday. As a matter of fact, we went to the gym yesterday because he's in town. And he said, "Man, I'm really sick to my stomach at what the Bears are doing right now. They got this shit together. I don't know what happened, but shit has changed for him." And I looked up and I said, "You're right. It has changed." And we watched that Thanksgiving game. Yeah, it was Detroit. But I saw something in this team that I didn't see just 3 weeks ago. I saw a team that had confidence again. I saw a team that saw a quarterback that they felt like they could win with again. And more importantly, they saw a coach that was actually believing what he was selling. Be you. Remember, you know the little saying on his call sheet, the little nice story that went with be you on the call sheet. They saw that guy that had that confidence again. And it starts up top with your coach. That confidence trickled down to the players, and then the players play on the field. It exudes the confidence of the coach. It's a really beautiful cycle when it's working right and it's correctly and in order the way it's supposed to be. And Matt Nagy has got his swag back. Now Mitchell Trubisky is starting to get his little, mojo going, and now this entire team is starting to believe again. The defense is playing well. The defense has always played well this season. They've had a hiccup here or there, but for the most part, they've been pretty good this season. They're not the reason that they're sitting here at 7-6, but I say that this could have easily been a 4-10 team right now. Instead, or how many games we played? 13, right? This could have been a 4-9 team right now or a 5-8 team. Instead, they're 7-6 and they're still alive and kicking. They won't win the division. That ship has sailed. However, they're not dead in the wild card. All right, they're right there where they need to be in case the Minnesota Vikings decide to slip and trip, or the Rams decide to slip and trip. The Rams have just taken them out a couple of weeks ago, so it'll be hard for them to get past them. But they still got the Minnesota Vikings once more, and they've already beaten them once this season. I'm just saying the Bears kept their playoff hopes alive because the Cowboys didn't need this game. They wanted this game. They didn't need this game because the NFC East is so horrific. It is so trash that, again, I said this on my podcast, they could be 7-8 in week 17, going into that week 17 game. 7-8, a game under 500, and they could have already clinched the NFC East. That's how bad this division is, okay? So they didn't need this game. They wanted this game. They didn't have to have this game. As long as they beat the Eagles in week 16, all right, they're probably going to win this division. So they don't have to win this game. And they didn't. But we'll get to the Cowboys here in a second. But good for the Chicago Bears. Even if they miss the playoffs. Even if they don't make the postseason. And I still don't think they're going to. But they're making a run at it. And they finished this season off 9-7. All right. That is a hell of a job done by Matt Nagy. All right. That's a hell of a job done by Matt Nagy. Because again, this team was somewhat spiraling out of control just 3 weeks ago. You know, they looked like they were on a crash course for 6-10, 5-11 just 3 weeks ago. And all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, they've reeled off 3 wins in a row. And we're sitting here talking about the Bears still in the wild card chase. And I think it's a hell of a job done by Matt Nagy. And Mitchell Trubisky is starting to play confident football. And I keep reminding people, remember last year against Tampa Bay when he threw 6 touchdown passes? Like, the dude didn't forget how to play quarterback. He wasn't good this season. I'm not going to sit here and defend him. He wasn't good earlier in the season, all right? But he wasn't playing with confidence. Why? Because his coach wasn't calling a good game that made him comfortable. He's still a young quarterback. People fail to realize that. I told you, we live in this day and age where fans want immediate gratification. And if they don't get it, this guy has to go and we got to get somebody else in here. And that's the thing that kills me, especially with quarterbacks. Like, especially when you've seen the flashes that this guy can get it done. It's not like he's been straight garbage the entire time he's been in the league. All right? He's been good. There have been times this man led his team to a division crown last year. He's been good enough. He was getting MVP. He was getting MVP attention before the season started. There were people putting down money on Mitchell Trubisky to win the MVP as a dark horse coming into the season. Don't tell me he can't play. So, anyway, I digress. Big win for the Bears. That was impressive. I love David Montgomery. Hope he's okay. He was in the blue tent at the end of this game. I think he's the key to them having a shot down the stretch because he needs to touch it more. He did in this game. He can catch it out of the backfield. He can run it. And that balance that you get when Mitchell Trubisky is able to hand it off, I think gives them what they need to get him comfortable and then them to make plays. I mean, think about this. J.P. Holtz was the leading receiver for the Chicago Bears tonight. That's all you need to know about what they're able to do when they're balanced on the offensive side of the football. Anyway, and they scored 31, by the way. Okay, J.P. Holtz was their leading receiver, and they scored 31 points. And, yeah, the defense didn't deliver a pick six or they didn't get a short field after a Dallas Cowboys turnover. They just matriculated the ball down the field all night. So it's not like they got set up with a short field or the defense contributed or special teams contributed with a big touchdown. That was all offense scoring those points. So, anyway, you get to the Dallas Cowboys, and for a team that seems like they like their coach, I don't think they love Jason Garrett. I don't think they love Redhead Jesus in Dallas. But you would have thought, you listen to all these players talk about how they want to win for Jason Garrett. I can't tell because for the second week in a row on a Thursday where you got a chance to come out and make a statement that says, hey, not only do we want to win this division that everybody calls horrible, which it is, and not only do we want to try to get some momentum heading into the postseason, But we want to save our head coach's job. I haven't seen that the last 2 weeks, and it's not going to happen. And there's so much talent on this team. It is ridiculous. And that's what's probably the most frustrating thing. But I told you guys at the top of the show, I think I figured out what's wrong with the Dallas Cowboys. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And every week I ask my dad, are you guys going to win this week? And he tells me, hell yeah, we going to win. You damn right we going to win the game. And I said, you told me that last week, boss. And he's like, no, we going to win tonight. Okay. Well, I figured it out. And you know what? I'm going to ask him the next time I see him if he knows why they're losing football games. And I'm going to see if our answers align and match up. But I figured it out. And you know what's crazy is that Dak Prescott is having this ridiculous season. His passing numbers are through the roof. His touchdown to interception ratio is ridiculous. And if not for Lamar Jackson, and if not for Russell Wilson, if not for Christian McCaffrey and Michael Thomas and Kirk Cousins and all these people and all these players having extraordinary years, and if not for the Cowboys being 6-7 right now and not being able to beat a team with a winning record, we'd be talking more about Dak Prescott as a potential MVP candidate. He's been that good this season. Here's the problem. It's come at the expense of the Cowboys' most important feature. And I figured it out tonight. And it took me 13 weeks or 14 weeks, but 13 weeks of Cowboys football playing on the field to actually put my finger on it. And I should have figured this out sooner because I know better. And this is a family member and I know them. But I couldn't quite figure it out until tonight. And I said, you know what? And I said this in passing about 3 weeks ago, but I didn't really make much of it. I probably should have made more of it then. But here it is. They're not running the football enough. This Cowboys football team is built on rushing the football. You remember, let's take it back a little bit. You remember back in 2014 when the Cowboys burst onto the scene and Tony Romo had this great season and he didn't turn it over a ton and their rushing attack was ridiculous. And that was the first year that we figured out, man, the Dallas Cowboys can run the football. This is crazy. Back in 14, DeMarco Murray went for over 1,800 yards rushing. And this offensive line started to kind of shape and mold themselves. And we're like, wow, Tony Romo not turning it over. And this defense that used to be trash, they're actually really good this season. And you know what? The defense was good. Why? Because they kept teams off the field because they were rushing the football and killing the time of possession and skewing it in their favor. And so the defense, all they had to do, they were fresh every possession. All they had to do was find a way to get a stop. It didn't matter if it was after one first down or if it was a 3 and out. They just had to get off the field and they'd be off the field for the next 6-7 minutes because the offense was going to drain the clock. They were going to put together an 11-12 play drive featuring the run. Tony Romo sprinkling a pass here or there. And they were just dominating teams. And they went 13-3 that year. And then they got smoked in the playoffs by the Giants, I believe. Whatever the case may be. That was back in 2014. You know, or the Packers beat them. I think it was the Packers that beat them that year. Anyway, the next year, Romo gets hurt. The running back situation, they let DeMarco Murray leave in free agency. They were really bad. That got them Ezekiel Elliott. They drafted Dak Prescott as well. The rest is history. Then the run game became a massive part of who the Cowboys were. The offensive line was completely intact at that point after they drafted a couple more pieces. And next thing you know, they've got the best rushing attack in football. They've got the best offensive line. And that was their identity. All right. And then you had a young quarterback in Dak Prescott that you wanted to babysit. It was cool when you could run it, keep the pressure off of him. He had a clean pocket. He could throw the football. And it was nice and everything was perfect. The Cowboys had their formula. And it worked. And it worked in 16. And it worked in 17. And it worked in 18. And then this year, there's a change. What is that change? They go from Jason Garrett calling the plays. They go from and Cowboys fans wanted their offensive coordinator gone. I can't think of his name, but I can see his face. But they wanted him gone. He was too conservative. He didn't open it up enough. They ran it too much, and he was too predictable. And so they wanted him gone. And so they get rid of him, and they promote from within. You get your backup quarterback from a couple of years ago that was, a quarterback's coach last year. And then all of a sudden, Kellen Moore is thrusted into the offensive coordinator job, and everyone's goo-goo gaga over Kellen Moore. In the early stages of the season, Cowboys start 3-0, and Kellen Moore is God, and they're throwing the football, and they're running it, and the offense is killing everybody, and they're playing bad teams, so it looks great, all right? And they're smoking everybody. They're 3-0, and Kellen Moore looks like the next best thing since sliced bread. And you know what happened? As often the case with these young, offensive-minded guys, especially if they used to play quarterback, that makes it 10 times worse. But, same thing happened with Matt Nagy early in the season where he refused to run the football and went to Kellen Moore's head like, man, Dak is killing it, man. I know Dak. I was in the same quarterback room with him. I was his quarterbacks coach last year. I know Dak. I know what his strengths are. We got all these weapons now. We just added Randall Cobb. We can throw the football. Zeke's nice and Zeke's cool, and we got Pollard now, so I got another guy I can throw it to out of the backfield. Like, what if I stopped giving Zeke Elliott the ball 25 times a game? What if I scaled that back to like 18 or so, and we throw it a little bit more? Yeah, and Dak can handle it now, and now Dak's throwing for 400 yards in games, and this is fun. This is cool. Yeah, it's cool when you're playing the Detroit Lions. Yep, it's cool when you're playing the Redskins, and yeah, it's cool when you're beating the Giants twice. Yep, that shit is fine, all right? It's cool when you're playing the little sisters of the poor, the teams that can't defend themselves, all right? It's cool when you are playing the likes of the teams that you can beat up on that can't defend themselves against the pass. But what happens when you play teams that aren't going for that? That can rush the quarterback a little bit, can play a little bit of coverage, and you don't do the things that got you to the show. You lose football games. You want to know why they can't beat Buffalo, why they can't beat Chicago, why they can't beat the better teams in the league, why they continuously lose these games, why they can't beat New England, all right, why they're struggling with teams like the Jets because they can play some defense. You want to know why the Cowboys are struggling in these situations? Because they're not running the football enough. Go check the records. Go check the stats in these losses. All right? Go look at how many rushing attempts. And it'd be one thing if the Cowboys are getting their asses absolutely thrashed early in the game and you got to go away from the run. I get that. Was that the case tonight? Was that the case against New England on a wet, nasty day? Was that the case against Buffalo on Thanksgiving? All right? What's the common theme between this game and last week's game? Yep, that's the easy answer. Low-hanging fruit. Great opening drive. Not a goddamn thing else for quite a while in that game. All right? They did it against Buffalo on Thanksgiving. They did it again tonight. The drive tonight was so impressive. It was so Cowboys-like. All right? So Cowboys-like. 17 plays. 9 minutes of the first quarter clock and a touchdown. Wow, that was a statement. It seemed eerily similar to last week against the Buffalo Bills. And I said to myself, that's the winning formula right there. You know how many carries Zeke Elliott had on the opening possession of the game? You know how many carries he had? 8. 8 on the first possession of the game. 8. They score a touchdown. It's not rocket science. You know how many carries he had after that first possession of the game? 11. The remainder of the game. 11 measly carries in a game that you're not blown out of, in a game that you're in for much of it. 11 carries. You know how many times Dak Prescott threw the football tonight? 49. 49 times. Now, I'm no mathematician, and I did not sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. So bear with me. But They are getting away from what makes them the Dallas Cowboys. They're getting away from what makes them who they are and what makes them a viable playoff football team. Kellen Moore is smelling himself. And look, you can fight it all you want, but when you're an offensive-minded guy and you played the quarterback position, or you're just an offensive-minded guy in general, and your first inclination is to throw the football, as it's going to be for Kellen Moore because he was an ex-quarterback, you're going to get away from the run at some point. It's rare that guys that have that inclination, that itch to throw it, stick with the run when they're supposed to. It's rare. You have to continuously tell them, hey, I want to run the ball here. Hey, let's not forget about the run, because they will forget about the run. And so you have that great opening possession, and then you get away from what you scripted. And I think Kellen Moore comes into the game telling himself, hey, I got to make sure I feed Zeke, man. We got to get off to a start running the football. We got to feed Zeke this game. And then they get that opening touchdown, and he's like, man, that went really well. Let's see if we can open things up a little bit. And then he forgets about number 21, who's the best player on their team, by the way. And then they look up, and next thing you know, they're down 10. And then he gets a little antsy, and he's like, well, I would like to call a couple more runs, but we're down 10. Let's call some passes. And then next thing you know, Dak's got 42 passing attempts. Zeke's only got 18 carries, and they lose the football game. Shit's gotten away from them. I figured it out. They're not running the football enough. And his name was Scott Linehan. Scott Linehan was the offensive coordinator that all Cowboys fans wanted to get rid of. He was too conservative. You knew what was coming, and we gotta get somebody else. We gotta get somebody new and somebody innovative. Kellen Moore comes in, and he done effed everything up. He done all they worked for, everything that they did that worked for them, has gone to hell in a handbasket. And now they're 6-7. I'm telling you, you want to fix this, start running the damn football. They still can run the ball. All right? Zeke Elliott had a good night. He just didn't get enough touches. This was one of those games where he was supposed to run it 27, 28 times, kind of manage the clock a little bit, keep that defense off the field. They're not playing good football right now, okay? It's not all on the offense. The offense is scoring points, but it's the way that they're scoring points. And keep in mind, they're missing field goals. They're not finishing drives. Run the football, all right? Win some of this time of possession. Keep the other team's offense, because your defense is not very good right now. They're not the defense that was dominant last year. So what do you do to remedy that? Run the football. Win time of possession. Keep them off the damn field. They're not playing complementary football right now in Dallas. They're not. Special teams isn't taking care of their end of the bargain. They're missing kicks. All right, kicking the ball out of bounds and stupid shit like that. The offense isn't sustaining enough drives. They're not running the football. They're not taking care of time of possession. And they're not finishing drives with touchdowns, instead settling for field goals. They're not converting on third downs. They're not converting on fourth downs. And then the defense isn't doing their job. They're not getting off the field. They're not getting stops on third downs. They're not forcing turnovers. They're not playing complementary football in Dallas. And it starts with the run game on offense. Everything is predicated off the run game in Dallas, and they're not doing that. They didn't do it tonight. They didn't do it last week. They haven't done it for much of this season, and that's why they're sitting here at 6-7. And unfortunately, they're still going to win the goddamn division, because everybody else in that division isn't very good. They aren't either, okay? That's why they're under 500, but they're the best of the worst. So they're still going to win this division. But in any event, let's get to your comments, because I'm done. All right. Let's see if we got any comments. And, by the way, like the video. All right. If you're out there and you're new to the chat and the channel, welcome, first and foremost. Secondly, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. And thirdly, go ahead, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air if it is pertinent. Okay? So, hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. All right. let's get to some comments, shall we? JP says, this division is completely dog shit, he says. It's complete dog shit. If the Skins miraculously win out, I don't want to hear Skins winning out and winning the division. I told you, we're not using the P word. We're not having that discussion. I'm not having that discussion with Redskins fans unless we beat the Green Bay Packers. And we're not going to beat them this week. So I'm not having that discussion with you guys. So, yeah, but it's ridiculous. And he says, there would be hell on earth in Philly and Dallas. Both of their fan bases would erode to no end. Yeah, it would get crazy. But it's not going to happen. But you know what? It should happen. That's how bad these two teams are. Neither of them deserve to win the division, nor do the Redskins. Again, nobody should go to the playoffs from this division. Man, is this bad. God, and I hate it that it's my division. It's my family that's acting up. You know how you go somewhere and everybody else is respectable, but it's your family that's acting an ass? That's how I feel right now. Like, out of all the families here, it had to be my family that is showing their ass and about to get kicked out of the establishment. Just makes me sick to my stomach. Anyway, Rex Smith says, missed you last week. Y'all got our coach fired, though. Bye, Ron Rivera. I was here last week. I was here. JP says, Garrett, the clapper, is basically done at this point. Oh, he was done after the loss on Thanksgiving. I mean, look, unless something crazy happens and the world flips on its head and Jason Garrett gets hot and this Cowboys team gets hot and they run through the playoffs and make it to the Super Bowl, Jason Garrett's fired. They could win the division, win a playoff game, and get eliminated in the divisional round, and he's still getting fired. Jerry's had it with Jason Garrett, and rightfully so. It's done in Dallas at this point. Wahoo Brad 24 says, has there ever been a division so trash that 3 of the 4 coaches get fired during or after the season? I don't think so. I think that's a really good point. I don't know if I've ever seen it where, and there's a chance that every coach in this division gets fired. I actually read an article today that says that Doug Peterson could be on the hot seat, which I don't believe. He just won a Super Bowl a couple of years ago. I said this about the Giants' old coach that's in Jacksonville right now, Tom Coughlin, that, you get a reprieve. And I talked about it with Baltimore's coach as well, John Harbaugh. That you get a little bit of a reprieve when you win the Super Bowl. There's about a good 4-year grace period before they really start getting a little hot. You get a little hot under the collar before your seat starts to get a little warm. You win the Super Bowl, you got 4 years to figure some shit out to get back to being respectable again. You get 3 years, and then on that 4th year, that's when they start saying, hey, wait a minute. You haven't done anything since you won the Super Bowl 4 years ago. We're not at that point with Doug Peterson yet, okay? But I read an article where they're saying, hey, he could be fired. I know it's Philly. They're not that irrational. So you're right. I think 3 out of the 4 coaches, the Redskins already fired Jay Gruden. They're going to have a new coach next year. I think Pat Shurmur's done in New York with the Giants. And Jason Garrett's definitely cooked in Dallas. So you're absolutely spot on. I don't remember a time, and I'm pretty sure, and I hate saying this because we'll probably look up and it happened 4 years ago, but it just feels like this hasn't happened in a very long time, if ever. It's crazy. Anyway, JP says, Eagles are no better than Dallas. I don't even think they can beat the Giants on Monday night. You know what's crazy is if Eli Manning plays and it's trending in that direction right now that Eli plays, it would not shock me that Eli gets one for his swan song on the way out, that he gets this one on Monday night. Wouldn't it be fitting that Eli Manning go out on a high note on what probably would be his last career start on a Monday night platform, on primetime television in general? It just seems like a storybook ending for Eli. This isn't the way he planned it going out. And now he gets a chance to kind of write that one final last chapter in his book. And he comes out and beats a struggling Eagles team that's vying for a division crown. And he comes out and slays those boys to the tune of, 24 of 34 for for 313 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception on a Giants 33-26 victory over the Eagles. Doesn't that feel like it's possible? It does. It really does. Reese says, Lou, in your view, which head coaches are toast? Who is on the fence and who could be fired? Surprisingly, I did a show on my podcast a few weeks ago, pretty much chronicling everything that you just asked. Gregory Lightbody says J.P. Holtz is greater than Sprinkle. Yes, he is. I always liked J.P. Holtz. I really did, and I always thought that there was a place on the roster for him, and I just never knew why he couldn't get on the field. I liked him as an H-back. Remember, they would put him at fullback at times. I thought J.P. Holtz had a little juice when he was in D.C. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, they decided not to keep him. And I don't think he's a great blocker. That's part of the reason they didn't keep him. But he can catch the damn football. We saw it tonight. And I saw it in the preseason. He can catch. So, unfortunately, they decided to move on from him. And he's playing well in Chicago. Good for him. Gregory Lightbody says, you're thinking of Scott Linehan, I know, because Cowboys fans always complaining. Yes, and his name finally came to me. But Scott Linehan knew how to run the goddamn football. He knew who his meal ticket was. Say what you want about Scott Linehan. He knew who his meal ticket was, and that's why the Cowboys win football games. Well, it seems like their new offensive coordinator didn't get the memo. All right? Didn't get the memo. Continuing on. Let's see. Reese says, Lou, if it was your choice, let's say hypothetically the Redskins call you up and ask you to pick the next head coach, who are you picking? I probably go with Greg Williams. There's a little nostalgia there because he should have been the head coach after Joe Gibbs 2.0. He should have gotten a job there. And who knows how it would have went. But I think it would have went in a different direction than it did after Joe Gibbs 2.0. But he's exactly what we need at this time. I don't know what his game management is. All right, haven't seen him in that capacity really in quite some time. He did have the Browns winning games late last season. And I do know that he's the kind of guy that's going to come in. He may ruffle some feathers initially with some players that aren't used to the way that he does things. But if you're on board and if he gets everybody to buy in, and the last time he was here, he got everybody to buy in, they loved him. I think the same thing would happen here. We got enough badasses that would want to fall in line with Greg to the point where I think he could come in here, change things around. He knows the inner workings of Redskins Park. He knows the bullshit that he's going to have to deal with. Again, I'm nervous about bringing an outsider in here that doesn't know the inner workings of Redskins Park because everyone's not built for the type of dysfunction that goes on behind closed doors in Loudoun County, okay? Not everybody's prepared to deal with the bullshit that goes on behind doors at Redskins Park, out in Ashburn, all right? There's a little something extra in the water out there. And you got to be able to deal with Daniel Snyder. And you got to be able to deal with all the things that go on back there. And he knows what happens back there. He knows what goes on. He's not going to be wet behind the ears, breath smelling like Similac. He's not going to be wide-eyed at the first time something stupid happens. I just don't want a guy to come in, think he has all the answers, gets in too deep, and then realizes he's in over his head. This shit is way worse on the inside than I thought from the outside looking in. Greg already knows what time it is when he comes. So he's not going to be surprised. I would be more comfortable with Greg Williams, and he's the type of guy that we need as a head coach. So that's probably who I would pick. But are there more innovative guys out there? Sure there are. But do they want the job? I think Greg wants the job. You just have to give him certain stipulations, like control, which is what I would force Dan Snyder to do. Like, hey, Dan, you got to back off and you got to let Greg have this. And it's got to be in the contract. So that's what I would do. Anyway, moving right along. Let's see. Oh, no more comments. JP says the Bears definitely have a huge confidence booster after this game. They've actually been playing with confidence the last 3 weeks. And you could see it last week versus the Lions. And they're building something slowly but surely. They're building towards getting back to who they once were. You know, they're not the Bears of last year, but they're the Bears of earlier this season. They started off this season solidly. It wasn't great, but it was solid. That's where they are right now, but they're figuring out how to get back to winning football, which they had lost their way in the midpoint of this season. They had a little stretch there where they got away from what works, and I think they're kind of figuring that out. And like I said, it was the first time adversity had hit for their head coach, Matt Nagy, and so good for him figuring some things out. Good for Mitchell Trubisky playing the way that he's playing, and good for the Bears as they're now back in the playoff discussion after another win tonight, 31-24 over the Dallas Cowboys. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T here on the program. Cowboys continue to struggle. I can't seem to get right with the Cowboys. I picked them to win the game. I thought about the Bears. I said, the Cowboys are a better team than the Bears, and they are, but they didn't play like it, and so they lose again. And I think I'm like now 0-6, 0-7. I think I'm 0-6 when I pick the Cowboys when they play against a team at or above 500. So maybe I just need to stop picking them when they're playing a team at or above 500. Maybe that's going to be their thing this season. When they're playing a lesser opponent that's under 500, they'll get the job done. But when they're playing a team at or above 500, I just need to steer clear of them. I haven't won this season, and I'm sick and tired of losing, picking them. And I did it again tonight. So anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage. It could be. I thank you guys for joining me. Bears get it done. They're now 7-6, over 500, and right back smack dab in the middle of a wild card playoff chase. Meanwhile, for the Dallas Cowboys, they're now 6-7, under 500 for the first time in a long time this season. But guess what? They're still leading the NFC East. Remarkably, they're still ahead in the division. Or they might be a half game behind Philadelphia now. They're a half game ahead of Philadelphia, who's 5-7. This division stinks. This is ridiculous. Anyway, that's it, man. Thank you for joining me. Like the video. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so. And make sure you check out the Louie T Network podcast. Brand new episode tomorrow coming your way. So that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Thanks for joining me. Louie T.